I want to make a wholehearted and unequivocal apology for this terrible injustice. First, to apologise for the failure in blood policy and blood products and the devastating and so often fatal impact this had on so many lives, including the impact of treatments that were known or proved to be contaminated, the failure to respond to the risk of imported concentrates, the failure to prioritise self-sufficiency in blood, the failure to introduce screening services sooner, and the mismanagement of the response to the emergence of AIDS and hepatitis viruses amongst infected blood victims. Second, to apologise for the repeated failure of the state and our medical professionals to recognise the harm caused. This includes the failure of previous payment schemes, the inadequate levels of funding made available, and the failure to recognise hepatitis B victims. And third, to apologise for the institutional refusal to face up to these failings, and worse, to deny and even attempt to cover them up. The dismissing of reports and campaigners' detailed representations, the loss and destruction of key documents, including ministerial advice and medical records, and the appalling length of time it took to secure the public inquiry which has delivered the full truth today. Mr. Speaker, layer upon layer of hurt endured across decades. This is an apology from the state to every single person impacted by this scandal. It did not have to be this way. It should never have been this way. And on behalf of this and every government stretching back to the 1970s, I am truly sorry.
This response can only begin in one place, because this is an injustice that has spanned across governments on an unprecedented scale, and collectively we failed to protect some of the most vulnerable in our country. And so, as well as paying tribute to the courage and determination of the victims, the infected and the affected, some of whom are here in the gallery today, I want to acknowledge to every single person who has suffered that in addition to all of the other failings, politics itself failed you. That failure applies to all parties, including my own. There is only one word: sorry. And by that apology, I acknowledge that this suffering was caused by wrongdoing, delay, and systemic failure across the board, compounded by institutional defensiveness. And as Sir Brian Langstaff makes clear in his report, any apology today must be accompanied by action. And so I welcome the Prime Minister's confirmation that compensation will now be paid. And he should be under no doubt whatsoever that we will work with him to get that done swiftly.
Away from her. She had 2 liver transplants as a result of it, multiple health complications, endless hospital stays, just took her life away from her and subsequently took her away from us as well. You know, she had struggled on for so many years that when the time did happen and when it did come, that we were all there with her. We got to be with her for the days leading into it, and then she was taken from us. She just couldn't, her body couldn't take it anymore. And to be honest with you, I don't I don't blame her. I mean, she said a couple of weeks before she actually died that, you know, she just wanted to close her eyes and she didn't want to open them again. She couldn't do it anymore. And at the time I thought it was very selfish of her. You know, I thought, why do you want to leave us? But looking now and seeing what she went through on a daily basis, I can't blame her for wanting to give up. I really can't. It was heartbreaking, you know, seeing her records that I attained recently, and, you know, seeing what she went through was just horrendous. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I know my mum had things in her mind and what she wanted done with that compensation, and she wanted to make sure that we were all okay. But she's not going to get to see that. You know, she campaigned herself for as long as she could while she was well enough to. She done interviews, she told her story, and she's not going to get to see that. She's not going to get to see their apology. She's not going to get to see the benefits of the compensation coming through. So do the right thing and pay the people what they deserve and let them move on with their lives.
Centres across the UK, which is extensively examined in this report. All the evidence points to a single, inescapable conclusion: that children and adults were not treated in a way which prioritised their safety above other considerations. Just as treatment choices by doctors mattered, so too did giving patients or their parents the information to make an informed decision about their treatment with blood or blood products, so they knew what to be alert for if they were infected. Very early on in the inquiry, it became clear that most people were not told enough about the risks of treatment with blood or blood products to give informed consent, if indeed they were told anything. Nor were they given information about alternative treatments, and yet respecting people's right to control what happens to their own body has always been an ethical cornerstone of medicine. Always. I've also recommended measures to end a defensive culture in the civil service and government. To do this, I've encouraged the government to reconsider whether, in the light of the facts revealed by this inquiry, it is sufficient to continue to rely on the current non-statutory duties in the Civil Service Code and the ministerial codes to end the defensive culture in the civil service and government. If people were given answers then and had recognition of their losses so they could have lived the rest of their lives free from financial hardship without having to fight for justice and recognition, it may be late, but it's not too late. Now is the time, finally, for national recognition of this disaster, for proper compensation, and for vindication for all those who have been so terribly wrong.